Alrighty, everyone, welcome to phase 2 of the class. We've talked about the 5 fundamental principles of Stoicism, kind of the toolbox of mental models and stuff that you can start applying to your life in various ways. We're now going to go over various kind of real life situations and how the kind of famous Stoics and also kind of modern day Stoics like you and me, how we apply the principles of Stoicism to these issues in everyday life. And in this video, we're talking about anger.
I'm really excited about this phase because, as the Stoics always used to say, there's knowledge and there's wisdom. You know the stuff. How does it actually apply to life, right? This first one is one that I think will resonate with many of you. It certainly resonates with me. And it's about anger. Seneca, writing, of course, 2,000 years ago, has called anger one of the greatest plagues in human history. He says that it's responsible for slaughters, massacres, and he views it fundamentally as the thing that holds humanity back as a race. And I think if he fast forwards 2,000 years, I don't think he will have seen that much progress when you look around the world today. And we have to think about why that is. And as you start applying those 5 techniques that we've looked at, you'll start to notice that this is a common theme that will likely pop up throughout your day. Like I've mentioned, road rage, or whether it's getting frustrated about a noise outside, or that someone else finished the milk in the fridge. And so Seneca wrote a full essay on this. And when people hear an essay, they think, oh, this is probably going to be a page. No, this is essentially a full book on anger. I would highly recommend it. I've done 3-week series on anger on the Stoics Teacher, so you can go and check out those quotes. Seneca said, the greatest remedy for anger is delay, taking a moment to pause and think before we do something. Now, a counter argument that he addresses in the essay is, we need anger to motivate us. Without anger, we won't get out of bed or do the things that we need to do, righteous anger, the anger that makes us act. Now, in response to this, he kind of says to people, they say, surely anger is necessary against our enemies or, bad things. He says, in no case is it less necessary, since our attacks ought not to be disorderly, but regulated and under control. A boxer isn't going to go into the ring really angry, flailing his hands around, because he's going to get knocked out within a second. The person that wins needs a calm, cool head. And so he strongly argues against this idea. And I know, Ollie, you've got thoughts on this.
Yeah, this is one of those things where I think possibly in the modern day, we're very keen to dismiss this idea because we like thinking that anger is useful. We like thinking, anger is what drives people to protest. Anger is what drives people to make change in their lives and to make change in the world. And to an extent, maybe that's true, but I think in basically 99.9% of circumstances, you can have that change without having the anger. Like, what is anger? It's an emotional response to a situation. It is, disturbing our tranquility inwardly. And people say that if you then get angry, then you can kind of convert that inner feeling of emotional turmoil into outward action. But you can just do the outward action without the feeling of internal turmoil. Like, you don't need to have your tranquility disturbed in order to protest. And you don't need to have your tranquility disturbed if you want to kind of be assertive with someone because they've done something mean to you at work. It doesn't, in all of those circumstances, the anger is a net negative rather than a net positive. And if you're the sort of person who can't act without anger, then that's probably just a story that you're telling yourself. At least that's what the Stoics would say. We absolutely can choose to do things rationally rather than thinking that I need to have this emotional response of anger in order to do something. And equally, it would be completely ridiculous for me to say that, anger drives me to action. Therefore, I would like the surgeon operating on me to be angry while he's operating. That's obviously not. You want them to be, have a calm, cool head and not let anger kind of go into the fray. And I really like in Darren Brown's book, Happy, which is all about kind of Stoicism and stuff. He talks about anger and he talks about how sort of in the 20th century, there was this kind of prevailing view that anger is this thing and we can't bottle it up. We have to release it. Kids would get advised that, if you have an anger problem, then you should take a pillow, put it in your garden and just kind of beat the pillow against the floor. You should punch the pillow really hard because it lets your anger out. And the point that Darren Brown makes in the book is that actually there's no evidence that any of this actually works. Anger is simply the story that we tell ourselves about a series of events that didn't really go as per our plan.
And I think on a definitional point, at no point are Stoics saying that you should repress your emotions. Seneca, when he describes anger, he's specifically talking about anger that leads to a loss of control. The argument would be that losing your control in that situation is a good thing, which he argues is absurd. And on another point, the Stoics aren't talking about, frustration and things like that. They think that that's absolutely natural. In terms of technical language, it's called a proto-passion. So let's say there was a really loud noise outside right now. Ali and I would be like, what was that, right? There's nothing wrong with that. And there's nothing wrong even with a bit of thinking, what was that kind of thing? But then at that point, we then use our reason to think, okay, there was a noise outside. What could that mean logically? Is it the case that it's some kind of fatal incident?
Explosion or something like that. Yeah.
Or is it more likely that it's something else? And we'd then have a look, examine it, and move forward. Once we let the proto-passion take over, and this is why Seneca's so adamant that we don't let it take over, we don't fall into this trap of like, this anger's okay right now. Because once it takes hold, if we take that proto-passion and then we say, yeah, no, this is definitely happening, it's hard to come back down. And so that's why Stoics say proto-passions are perfectly natural. We don't want them to develop into passions, and that word meaning not passion the way we talk about it today, but as a negative emotion such as anger, which is viewed as the worst passion. So that's a really important point. Not repressing it, frustration is fine, but this kind of anger and loss of control, which we regularly see lead to harm in the world today, that's the thing that we really need to avoid. And there are a number of strategies in order to help us avoid those, including some of the techniques we talked about in phase 1.
Yeah, and on that note of proto-passions as well, this is something that I think about anytime I find myself experiencing a negative emotion. Like, I can't do much about the fact that I've experienced this emotion, so if I feel a flash of anger because someone has done something to me or whatever, then that would be the proto-passion. That would be kind of the subconscious response to the stimulus. But then almost immediately, the reason I would feel a sense of anger is because I'm then reinforcing the story to myself and being like, oh, I felt that flash of anger. Oh, that person's a mean person. They shouldn't have been like that. Therefore, I'm going to feel angry. And that's for some reason, and so we can't do anything about the proto-passion, but we can choose to tell ourselves a different story of events. The more you practice this, the more the axons that fire together wire together, the more you kind of recognize the emotion, and immediately you start kind of working back. So now if I feel a flash of anger, I'll be like, oh, that's interesting. And I kind of examine it and be like, oh, why am I feeling that way? Oh, because that person said that thing and that made me feel this way. And I suppose the reason it made me feel this way is because the story I'm telling myself is that that person should be behaving honorably. But because I've done my premeditating adversity, I know that people sometimes don't behave honorably, and it's completely unfair of me to expect that. Therefore, yeah, fair enough. I might also say to myself that, yeah, I guess if I were in their position, that's how I would interpret the events as well. And, it makes sense that they said that mean thing to me. I'm not going to take it personally. It's purely a result of the circumstances. And then I find that my flash of anger is replaced by this kind of like cool-headed CBTing myself out of feeling the actual anger, because feeling the actual anger, defined as a loss of control, is never, ever going to be helpful.
I'm going to go full teacher mode here now, and you'll have to forgive me. There is homework. There is homework on the course project. What I'd really like you to do is go back and look at the dichotomy of control technique. And when doing it, I want you to focus specifically on when you're feeling proto-passions. So has a proto-passion been present when you're facing a particular situation, reflecting on anger specifically this week? Because no matter how at peace you are, there will be something that will rile you up. It's the way of the world.
Absolutely. So thank you for watching this video about anger based on Seneca's essay on anger, and we'll see you in the next video.